This podcast is brought to you by Icon Foods. Icon Foods sells natural sweeteners that will help you clean up your nutrition label without sacrificing flavor. Head over to iconfoods.com to find out more, and don't forget to mention that the Peas on Moss podcast sent you. Hi Peas on Moss listeners. This week we're bringing back an oldie but a goodie episode to share while we spend the time creating a new episode for you. Next week, you'll get to hear brand new content, but I wanted to share an older episode with you to highlight the incredible guests we have featured over the past 4 years. If you'd like to search for past guests, please visit peasonmoss.com and go to the podcast page. As always, the guests are putting themselves out there, so if you're willing, please visit their businesses and let them know that you heard about them from Peas on Moss. Thank you so much for listening to Peas on Moss. Join our conversation with the RCA Hustlers Under 40 monthly happy hours, or start a new conversation. Contact me on social media. Just look for Peas on Moss. And I think it really does take international travel and experiencing the people beyond what's shown in movies to really understand, oh, you're trying to make money to pay for things for your family, to give your kids a better life and, improve the overall community that you live in.
Yeah, and when we sit behind a computer, you see what the media or bloggers or Instagrammers or whoever it is, whatever they want you to see. You don't see the realities behind it, and there's definitely a disconnection when you're so far away from a culture and a company, and it makes everything so much more relatable and down to earth. I mean, it was refreshing just sitting down and breaking bread with, a whole bunch of Russian people who we're trying to do some business with and, help each other out and learn about different things and taste totally different things. And, there's a commonplace amongst sitting at a table and breaking bread with people. And, I think if we got out of our seats a little bit more often and, went over to learn about somebody else's culture, it's really eye-opening. I mean, it definitely changed my perspective of, everything that I thought it was. I went into this thinking, oh God, what am I getting myself into? And it was like going to visit you out in San Francisco,
Nice.
Just going to another place and meeting new people. And at the core of it, like, everyone's a good person. And, we all want to do good things by the right people around us.
Yeah. What was it like as an American businesswoman over there? I mean, Moscow and Dubai are not stereotypically, promoters of women in business, but I don't know if that's even true.
I don't know if that's even true either. The people I happen to be interacting with just happen to be men, which is common amongst our industry. So it's not, I was, shocked to see that. But there were a lot of women, that I met with in Russia who held pretty high titles and were responsible for some pretty serious pieces of business. So I don't know. I mean, I was there in such a short trip, but, I think women are being perceived much differently now, of course, all over the world than they were 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I think I have more opportunity now, and thanks to people like my mother who, worked in a man's world, and she was a systems architect for years and, really paved way for women like us to kind of create our own names in whatever field we choose to go into. So, it just kind of, there was a lot of self-reflection about that when I was coming back into it. And, especially being a woman in this space, I always like to warn other young women what they may find, because it's true. But at the end of the day, as long as you're smart and you're hardworking, people see that and they see beyond your gender. And, I think that's the way our generation at least is heading, which I really like.
Yeah, that is so good. I will agree with you that we're in a great time because we're young in the industry. A lot of women and men ahead of us have forged kind of that equal opportunity for us. And I think we're in a position where we can really direct where that goes. You're in a leadership role. I'm in a leadership role. And I think as we start to look at the younger generation of new graduates coming out, how we want to give them the world, but also we're still kind of carving what our niche is going to look like as the years go by too.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, especially in, the marketing world, I do a lot of work with people who are considering putting products on shelves, and you have all these preliminary focus groups before you have focus groups. And then you get, I'll sit in a meeting, I'll say, well, what percentage of people are going to the grocery store and buying this product? I mean, if it's something that's, I don't know, a lavender scented soap, do you think that's something a man's going to jump at? I mean, if you're doing marketing around it, you'd want to make it a little bit softer and a little bit more feminine and a little bit more eye appealing, and it brings different perspectives. I mean, for all walks of life, wherever you are, but, with having an industry so one-sided, you're losing market opportunity potentially.
Yeah. How is it, because I know you've got a marketing and creative writing background, and then you've gotten a master's of food science. What is it like when you walk into a room, say with a client, and you're talking about trends in the market and how New Spice can meet those trends with that brand, and they look at you like, oh, well, you're just a marketing person, but you've actually got, a very deep science background too. How do you address that without just bashing them over the head with it?
Good question. Usually I like to have initial phone calls with people. I'd much rather jump on the phone than, hide behind an email and try to explain myself because, text is interpreted in 1,000 billion different ways. So, and I also think, there's a relationship there. And if you get on the phone with someone and there's no synergy and you guys just don't understand each other, maybe it's not the right partnership, or if you're totally on different pages, I mean, does it make sense to actually go out and sit down with someone that already has reservations about what you can and can't do for them? So personally, I always like to have a brief introduction, an introductory call. Hey, this is who I am. What are you looking for? What are you thinking about? And a lot of these sessions, I guess, usually start out by what I call ideation sessions, because people don't call you when everything is going right. When everything is happening the way they expect it to, that's great. But people call you when they have a problem or they see an opportunity. So I always like to open the conversation with what's going on, or I literally ask people all the time, what's cooking? Because that's what we do. I really appreciate puns because I'm also very dorky at the core. But literally, you're opening the conversation, you're making it real, you're becoming relatable. I mean, if you think of any conversation you've had with a prospective client or supplier, there's some sort of common ground that makes you want to pick up the phone and talk to them again, or ask an opinion, or bounce something off of somebody. And I think as a marketer or as a problem solver, as a food scientist, if you are unable to offer that to your audience, or even one of your peers, it's difficult to have any sort of connection to continue that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I like the method of preferring to use the phone over the email. I will admit that there are times that I really would rather just stay on email. But every time I have agreed to chat, either in person because we're both going to a conference, or especially by an introduction on the phone, yeah, I mean, I can express my needs I fumble so much in expressing my needs sometimes because I'm doing ideation. I'm not exactly sure on the delivery system and the dosage and et cetera, et cetera. And it's nice to talk to somebody in the supplier side who can say, oh, I can totally help you with that. Here are 2 versions of that should be able to provide something of what you've just triangulated towards.
Right, without a doubt. And I mean, that's what we really do at the core of New Spice, because I mean, in the ingredient world and being a custom blender, I have my fingers literally in every pot that you can imagine. And essentially you would add salt and pepper for, I could be there, So having the opportunity to learn about what the ingredients are in the marketplace and what's available and what functions as what, and where is the trend leading? I really have an opportunity to learn a lot and then pass on that knowledge to my customers who aren't in the space that I'm in and aren't exposed to the infinite amount of opportunities or ingredients or solutions that are really out there for them to consider. So, I would consider, even though at the core of it, we are a manufacturer, we really are more of a consulting service. I tell my customers all the time, what's your problem? In the perfect world, what would it cost you? What do you want to do? How do you want your label to read? What kind of functionality does it have to have? And then from there, we'll kind of figure out, we shouldn't be considering any artificial ingredients or preservatives or anything. What we should be doing is using ingredients found in nature that are trend forward, that people like reading on a label, and then educating them on how to use it in their current processes.
That education piece takes a lot of time. And, and I just had an email conversation with a supplier who's working on a formula for us. And they're doing a really great job on saying, okay, here, we understand the restriction list that you provided, wanted to double check this raw ingredient, to see if we can put that in there, or if not, what are some of the alternatives? And it's really such a powerful thing to have that conversation with the supplier and to say, wow, thank you so much for calling that out. One of the raw materials that she sent to me was one that I didn't realize was a red flag, but I went and kind of Googled to see which bloggers have thrown shade on it. And it turns out there has been shade thrown. So it's like, oh, crud. Let me look into why and what are our alternatives for the function that you needed it for. Can we just steer clear of that iceberg, or do I actually have to go ramming towards it?
It's crazy because, you and I would think that's the most practical thing. I mean, you're really adding such a value to the service that you're offering. And I think sometimes, and I don't know, everyone's got their own selling techniques, and I'm not here to bash anybody, but, it's so easy to say, hey, this is something that might work for you, and I know you've been looking for it, or you shouldn't be considering using this ingredient, and this is why. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it's just educating people on what is, what isn't, and what it is perceived as. Mm-hmm. And, I work with so many people who don't really have big R&D departments or big marketing departments or even departments to look over their labels to make sure they meet USDA or FDA guidelines. So offering that service and just educating them so that they can then educate their customers or then their end users, you're really offering them more power to understand the potential of their product lines better. And at the core of it, that's what you do as a problem solver. At least that's what I think we should do.
Yeah, no, I think what you're getting to is the core of what new levels of customer service look like. I think you and I have run headlong into kind of the good old boys school, and I will temper my statement with some of those good old boys are really fantastic people, and they functioned in a business world and behavior that's really different from the world that we have now. And I think that needs to evolve because our consumers ultimately are more watchful of words and catchphrases than they used to be. And we as the kind of manufacturers on the say, way far background, all the way up to the consumer-facing brands, which is where I am now, it's our responsibility to have that conversation with our suppliers because we are having to message that out to our consumers so much more than before.
Yeah, and you know what? I think more so than ever. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, consumers buy into the personality of the brand. They buy into the brand's integrity. They can get whatever product for whatever they want to sell whenever they want, literally. So what is it about somebody's brand or restaurant chain that is making it successful and making people go back? I always think about, Tom's shoes, as simple as they are, but they're shoes for a purpose. And people buy them not because they're super fashion forward, and maybe the newer styles are, but they're buying them because they know that they're going to put a pair of shoes on somebody else's feet who wouldn't be able to have them otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and that actually reminds me of a report that I did for Lundberg where we talked about the cause-driven purchaser or the purpose-driven purchasing. You know, where the new consumer, presumably the millennial, is very interested in what this brand does in its community, whether that's the international community or a local community. I've seen it be successful where you know, I guess local brands here in Seattle will say, you know, for every XYZ purchased, we will give, you know, this type of donation to some other element of the community, even tangentially related to its own brand. So Tom's is giving shoes to kids, but I've also seen, you know, I think it's Patagonia actually that donates to an amount of waste that's drawn out of the sea. So they're working on a waste cleanup, not directly because that's their brand, but because that's what they stand for.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, as humans on this planet, we have a duty to do that and make sure the planet is around for generations to come. But, you know, I think we live in an age where we're more financially settled. We're connected more because of the internet, really. And we're exposed to so much more on a daily basis than people ever were even 25 years ago. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone when I was a kid. I did not have the world at the palm of my hands, but I do now. And I can look something up if somebody says something in the middle of a conversation. You know, I mean, I'm sure you remember going to the library and looking up the encyclopedias to do your work. I mean, you don't have to even think about doing that anymore. And that's just changed over a handful of years now. And teachers are teaching students in such a different way. I mean, when I was in my undergraduate, I went to a small private school, and the core of the content, the teacher said, you can go to an internet and find whatever you want. But I'm going to teach you how to ask the right questions and how to really dig into what it is you want answered. And I think if we can apply that in every way, shape, or form of all of our lives and what we do, we would just have so much more going for us, and we become so much more grounded at that point. It's just incredible how things are different.
Yeah. So how has that kind of led to the evolution of how New Spice does its business?
Oh, that's a good question.
Looping it back around.
So we are still, you know, we're a manufacturer. You know, anyone can mix spice blends in their house. You know, just imagine doing that on a larger scale. The equipment's similar. You know, your ingredients are similar. I think what technology has done for us is, because I'm doing so much more regional flavor trend work, you know, from all ends of the planet, I really have access to taste an exotic berry from Indonesia just by reading a description of it. And if I'm intrigued by what the description says and what the applications or potential applications of it are, I can then go ahead and go on Amazon and order it if I wanted to try it out. And I do that all the time. You know, I'm constantly looking at, well, what are people buying? How are they buying it? How are they using it? How can I maybe use this and introduce my consumer base to something they would have never considered before? So in that sense, I think we do have a lot more opportunity, plus all the databases that I use all the time to really find trend information. Those are incredible. And the fact that I get newsletters from amazing companies once a week or once a month or whenever it is, just saying, hey, you should check this out. Or if you don't want to check it out, you should definitely be aware of it because people are talking about it. And that's tremendous. It saves me a ton of time from trying to figure out all these little bits of pieces that I should know, but I would have never been exposed to. You know, just because my customers maybe aren't asking about it because they don't know that they should be asking about it or whatever the reason is. So that's personally, I think that's tremendous. And I definitely recommend for anyone who's interested in learning more about what's going on in the industry and the more macro level, I mean, most of these publications or newsletters are free. All you got to do is just sign up.
Yeah, and then take the time to read all of them.
Right, and then take the time to read all of them. That's
I'll admit, like, there are daily posts that come out that I do not always read because, you know, if the emails hit too high of a double-digit number, I start to triage. And that double-digit number is actually not as high as you'd possibly think. I'm like, nope.
But it's also, you know, it's extra time you're taking out of your day where you would be focusing on other tasks. And as important as it is, depending on what your job is in the moment, because I'm sure, like me, your job is changing every hour depending on what's next. And that's just the fast-paced world we live in. You know, your core concentration of where your opportunities are or challenges are. I mean, I rewrite my list every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, part of the way that's how I organize myself, but every day my list is different from what's my top priority, what's a second priority, what's time sensitive and needs to be done. And I am not the world's fastest reader, so it does take me time. But, you know, if you have someone asking about what is the new application or something, you know, it's good to understand what new equipment is out there. And there's a lot of ways you can get exposed to it, but a quick and easy way is a snapshot of, you know, what somebody puts out for you to read amongst your community.
Yeah. So question, when Newspice, when your dad took over Newspice, and a lot of the meat manufacturing world kind of changed as far as what's being produced on the East Coast versus, you know, I guess against some of the new trends like Clean Label that have come out more recently. How is your guys' pivot so that Newspice has kind of expanded where I don't actually know your brand through meat processing, I actually know you through other things?
So we don't have any brand. I mean, we're a custom manufacturer, so everything that we do is B2B. I work with people who will, you know, buy their seasoning blends that, you know, the best new barbecue rub in the world, and they'll put it under their label. So you'll never see a Newspice label.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly, a lot of, and my grandfather's business, we used to have a corned beef company in Brooklyn, and being in the meat industry is hard. I mean, it's long hours, it's, you know, tight margins, it's, you know, you don't have that much time on your shelf life. You know, if you're doing fresh provisions or value-added products that aren't, you know, cooked or cured or meant to be hang-dried for 90 days. And it's hard work, and there's a lot of room for things to happen, especially now with allergens being a major issue. I mean, it's a lot to stay on top of. So family businesses are kind of either selling their businesses to larger manufacturers, you know, like the Tysons or the Purdue's of the world, and kind of, you know, taking a step back and enjoying their retirement. And up until very recently, I would say in the past 5 years, there's been a more artisan boom for butchering and meat processing. And I'm sure you see that out in San Francisco. And we see a ton of it in Brooklyn. You know, these small handcrafted, really interesting, you know, I had a beef and goat cheese sausage. It was, you know, just like really interesting stuff. Or I had a curry sausage, which was, I mean, they were delicious, but these are all being, you know, handmade. These guys are kind of testing out their recipes and putting into markets and just, you know, letting the consumer decide if they like it or not. So I think there's a resurgence of this art in some way, but it's also, you know, people like the traditional, you know, everyone likes a good corned beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the new. People want to try new things. You know, we developed a blueberry bourbon breakfast sausage a couple years ago, and it was awesome sitting next to a plate of pancakes smothered in maple syrup. I mean, different way to kind of, you're basically reinvigorating the traditional dish and offering consumers something else to just try and consider. So I think in that respect, some of it's definitely gone away, but on the flip side, there's a lot of it staying right here. It's just with new people, a lot of younger people, and not necessarily people who are going to culinary school or learning, the craft by a teacher, but actually practical experience and playing with different grind sizes and putting different cuts of meat together to create a totally delicious, juicy hamburger, and maybe seasoning it with something and maybe just selling it plain as this is a brisket sirloin mixed burger. So in a long-winded answer, I think the market's just kind of shifted a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Peas on Moss will be right back. Can you believe we've been broadcasting for over 4 years? The podcast has appreciated nearly 40,000 downloads, and the website itself has 1,000 followers and just under 500 direct subscribers. And in fact, social media outlets have twice that active engagement on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. With just 2 corporate sponsors and media partnerships, Peas on Moss has grown to have a broader outreach and access to exclusive innovation and food trade summits. It's small, but the podcast and education material have reached food business entrepreneurs, restaurant chefs, food science and culinology students, product developers, and businesses that supply food and ingredients to this multi-billion-dollar industry. Would you support Peas on Moss? I am looking for core sponsors who are seeking ways to connect with product developers through dynamic conversations set up on podcasts. Speakers and advertisers have gained clients by being heard on Peas on Moss, and I want to keep the network and relationships going. With your annual sponsorship commitment, you'll help the podcast keep going by contributing towards the cost of hosting the show. You're also helping us increase awareness of food manufacturing, food science, and culinology, supporting both product development and awareness of the industry at large. Along with it, your business will benefit from brand awareness in media and have access to a different audience than other advertising methods, and have room to share more information than typical print advertisements. Your presence is also evergreen, as these episodes are posted permanently on the website and available for streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Please contact Kimberly today to become part of this podcast movement. Visit peasonmoss.com and click on the sponsor of the show for details. Welcome back to Peas on Moss. So how did you guys look at how the market shifted and you're thinking, okay, well here it looks like there's some white space here. So when you tried those new sausages or the product that you mentioned, the blueberry, what did you say?
Blueberry bourbon.
Blueberry bourbon. Sorry, the brain stopped working. I was thinking blueberry brandy. I don't know. Have you pushed your technical team to innovate, or how does that kind of translate into the rest of your brand and company?
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, which is really when we started, we brought on this brilliant man, Mark Bento, to manage our laboratory. And he's had his fingers into everything. He's worked in flavor companies and seasoning companies and has a ton of practical experience in snack food and meat processing and prepared foods. And he's actually somebody I look up to tremendously. He's taught me a ton about food science and ingredients that you would never learn in a textbook. And with me running the sales team and him running our technical team, we really are able to have interesting conversations that force the two of us to kind of think differently. And a lot of the much larger companies everywhere in the food industry, they have huge marketing and technical teams to design trend forward products. And about 4 years ago, what Mark and I decided is, we need to come out with something that's going to be a talking piece, which is actually how the blueberry bourbon breakfast sausage idea came up. It's, we can be as reactive as we want. And, when our customers ask for things, give them what they think they need. And then as it turns out, that's not really what they need at all. But instead, showing, the potential of what could be. So for this, and I do my annual campaign, we start working on it in the summer, and then I always go to launch in January. I think January 1st is a good time for us because the holidays are over and all that good stuff. And so every year I work with my technical team and say, what do you think is interesting? What kind of trends did you see this past year that we should consider maybe putting together for our annual campaign? And for this one that we did, I think it was about 3 years ago, we basically did something called the Spice Girls Travels. And we did a regionally trendy products from different areas in the United States. So we did a green tea. It was a green tea and ginger panko for fish applications that was popular, down in the South. The blueberry bourbon breakfast sausage came about because bourbon's huge right now, and blueberries are a different way to enjoy sweetness. I think there was a hot buttered rum wing marinade that we created. And then what I did was I kind of tied it all together, and I created these little postcards with photos of the food prototypes on them and told a little story about how I traveled the U.S. and got a chance to try all these different things with my family and friends. And I just wanted to share my experiences with you. So while I don't necessarily think anybody's going to say, I need to have that blueberry bourbon breakfast sausage exactly how you made it, I want them to say, this is really interesting. Can you tweak it so that it suits my customers' flavor preferences more? Or this is really interesting. What else can you do with bourbon flavors or using bourbon in food applications? So I think those talking pieces and creating new products that we consider as trend forward are just as important as doing those reactive projects where customers are specifically asking for things.
Yeah, I mean, it probably keeps it interesting for the technical team. I have always wondered if for some of the manufacturing companies, specifically the spice companies, if you kind of end up doing mostly reactive R&D instead of getting to really lead that trend and be innovative on your own. I mean, obviously there's a problem-solving element that requires innovation and creativity, but I was thinking about a previous life in a spice company I worked closely with, and I would call and ask for 4 types of curry, 3 of which already, were off the shelf, and then one of them I would say, can you also do something kind of harebrained and different? Mm-hmm. But, I was like, how many times can you really make a curry to order before you're kind of like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, being a marketing person at the core of my life, I think that's really interesting. I mean, look at Instagram. Look at all these crazy things that you see people, for example, dough in New York City. It's a cookie dough joint. And they make it so fun and so engaging that people want to come from all over the place to go to this restaurant. Or I guess it's a dessert bar, or I don't know what you would call a cookie
its own
dough
category.
Yeah. But, people want to see what's off the cusp, and they want to see what's interesting and different, because you may pick 1 or 2 flavors that trigger nostalgia or a memory or something and say, well, I could take this, but I could do this with it. And this is what fit my audience. And here are some people I think I can really market to who would also find some value in this new product. So being a marketing person, like I said, I really push this. And it also gives your technical team an opportunity to create and play. And I let my culinary and technical guys really drive this. And then what I'll do is I'll help them from the marketing perspective, make it a cohesive campaign. And then at our sales meeting, with myself and my technical team, we'll present it to the sales guys. And that'll be the first time that they see it. And we'll give them considerations on how they may introduce it to existing customers or potential customers.
So I have Oh, go ahead.
Not all the annual campaigns that we do are flavor trend drivers. Some of them are functional system drivers also. So last year we had developed a phosphate replacing system. So, so depending on what the trends are and what people want, we'll shift years, but this year we're actually going back to a flavor trend one, which I'm super excited about because we've been trying some really awesome things lately.
Did you bring any feedback back from Dubai and Moscow that you're going to try?
I sure did.
Nice. So yeah, what do you do when you're there? Do you hit the spice markets and you're like, oh, that's a cool blend? Or what is that, I guess, ideation and inspiration travel look like?
Yeah, I mean, I go to the spice markets wherever I possibly can just to see how people are presenting it and what they're doing and what they have that's easily accessible. So it was really interesting going to Dubai because, I said to them, I said, I need to eat locally. I'm only here for like a day and a half. I went to the Burj Khalifa because it's an incredible building. And I went to the spice market and, I saw the Gulf and I said, now I'm ready to go eat some authentic Dubai cuisine. And everyone basically told me, well, authentic Dubai cuisine is authentic cuisine from all over this area. So you have Turkish influences, you have Iranian influences, you have Indian influences in literally every restaurant that you go to, which I thought was super cool and actually made it more exciting for me to come back and tell my team, hey, this is how it actually is there. And, I brought a bunch of curries back and I brought a bunch of spices back, and saffron is huge there and super cheap, and they're doing a ton of things with saffron. So, the American market really hasn't adapted that as much, but, what can we make with some saffron? What kind of interesting dishes can we play with and throw together that the American consumer might find interesting? So, I think it's a little bit of talking to the local people. They had these dried lemons, which I thought was really interesting that I've never seen in American cooking. And they almost throw them in a one-pot meal at the end to finish it, and gives it this unique flavor complexities. I don't know. I haven't cooked with it, so I can't speak off of experience. But this is what the guys in the spice market were telling me. And when I brought it back, I only just got back a couple days ago, but I sort of explained to my technical team, and all of us are on our phone saying, well, what is this thing? What do you call it in English? And how can we create something with it? And what should we create with it? And so it really got everyone inspired to kind of taste something we've never even considered tasting before too. So, I mean, talking to the local people is the way to do it with, anything in your life, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. If I had unlimited budget, I would totally eat somewhere new every night and just, and pick kind of the zany things if possible.
Yeah. Give me something interesting.
Yeah. Although I will say I was working with a company in New Jersey at one point, and I was like, I want the best bolognese. And I literally ate bolognese for 3 days straight because I really wanted to see how that was executed differently than how I had learned about it as a kid, which was out of a jar, to, how it's made at, if there's still a grandma available, if she's simmering it all day or whatever she's doing, or a grandpa.
It's interesting because we have, when my dad first got into business, we're in Jersey. We supply a lot of guys who, make Jersey Shore sausages,
Mm-hmm.
So we have a ton of different formulas. And what my father said is, he said, one day I want to actually taste what all these taste like. Because, we had the spice formula of what was actually in there. And he got 10 different sweet Italian sausages and tried all of them. And he said, oh, this is what this tastes like. And this is what this tastes like. And, it's just so interesting to bring it all full circle as well. What are people actually doing with it? How do these crazy ingredients actually taste when you put it into application? So, yeah, I totally get that you did that, and I would have probably done the same thing.
Yeah, next time you come to the West Coast, let me know. We'll pick a cuisine and then just eat ourselves sick on that one.
I'm in.
So what do you kind of spend a lot of your days doing? You said that you do different things every single day, which I think is the appeal of the food industry. But what are kind of your big rocks in your jar?
Being in a managerial position in a growing company is things are constantly changing, whether it's technology, new training, new systems. And being only as young as I am, I only have so much experience. So I find that I spend a lot of my time either talking to people who have been executives or CEOs and getting their perspective on certain situations, or reading a lot, or listening to podcasts, or talking to my peers, and really figuring out a strategy that would be best for my company and the people within our organization, because our organization and our personalities can be totally different than somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
I would say we're more of a creative type. And, some people are more of, get it done type. And some people are more of, let me teach you things. So, it's how do you find that right language and commonplace to connect with everyone and in turn be really effective. So personally for me, I think that would be definitely where I spend most of my time, is educating myself and gaining perspective. And then making sure I'm executing it in a way that it's relatable and it's adaptable.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see how, correct me if I'm wrong, but the communication kind of downstream or across the aisle, if you will, is really where the strength or the weakness of an organization can be found, because sometimes, you can't be the woman with all of the hats. You have to be able to delegate those responsibilities and have them bought into the vision overall, and have them execute at least, 80% as well as you think you could have done yourself. And, that's kind of the leadership piece. It's going, here's everything I know, and here's the vision I have for it, and I trust you to execute it.
Without a doubt. And I have an awesome staff. I mean, when I'm out of the office, traveling for business or even vacation, I have 110% confidence that anytime somebody who would normally rely on me for an answer calls the office and asks for anybody, they can get them an answer that will be helpful to them. And I am very fortunate to have some incredible people to help me look really good, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the thing. And, we're a family business. My father is there every day. My brother joined the company about 1.5 years ago full time. And my mom is very much part of the company as well. So, we're very involved. We love our employees. A lot of them have been with us for 10 plus years in the 23 years that my father's owned the business, which, I think speaks a lot to the organization and what my father's built. And, you know what? They literally are family to me. I spend a ton of time with them every day, and it's their choice to work at our company. And in the age of opportunity, I'm fortunate to have so many people who want to spend that much time with us and help us do some incredible things in this space.
Wow, that's really cool. And really that attitude is so obvious when interacting with you, either, on this podcast or as friends at a trade show, or even as potential client and supplier. It's that passion for your business, for the product that you sell, really does come through. And it's great to hear that it goes through all of the ranks as well.
Yeah, it's I love getting up and going to work in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, it's and I have no problem working a zillion hours a week, because I know it's the more we can do, the more opportunities I'm able to offer my employees, and that's really cool. That's been one of the most interesting transitions. I went from being, an employee to being a manager, is I really can make a difference. I really can change somebody's life, somebody in my building. And that means a lot to me. I've had some employees come to my father and I say, you've offered the opportunity to change my life and the direction that my family life was headed. And if you've ever had an opportunity to hear that from somebody and see how much they mean it, it's incredible. It makes you want to work a little bit harder every day.
Yeah, and I think that zillion hours that you work, a lot of it does integrate with the areas that you're passionate about, and obviously having the family business element of it kind of keeps all of those layers kind of piling on top of themselves. How do you actually keep everything straight where it's like, okay, well, today I'm a sister and a daughter, tomorrow I'm the VP or whatever, or do you just allow those all to blend constantly?
Well, I am not naturally an organized person, so I do rely heavily on technology to keep myself organized. And like I said, I rewrite my priority list every day. I read a lot of books from very successful CEOs and entrepreneurs, and I picked up a couple tips and tricks here. And, one of the most valuable things I've ever heard is if you can answer an email in 2 minutes or less, do it immediately. And it's been tremendous in just getting things done. But everything else is, like I said, your priorities change from day to day. One of my customers might come to me and say, I have this huge opportunity. I need you to come in right now and sit down with me and figure out how I can land this opportunity. So even though I might be, I was maybe planning to do some, macro strategy development at the company that day, it's, well, not anymore. Now I've got somebody else's opportunities to help them gain clarity on. And so besides my lists, which are all over my desk if you ever come to my office, and I'm very proud of them because a lot of them have X marks off them, so which means I'm done with that task. But I use tools like Evernote and Wunderlist, and I use my Outlook calendar reminders, and I use followupthen.com. And if you've never used it, it's the best follow-up tool I've ever seen. It's brilliant. And I always try to keep myself relevant with what technologies are out there, because there might be the next new thing that I don't know about, that I should know about, that's going to make me even more efficient. So that's kind of how I organize myself. I wish I could do it better, but I think everybody wishes they can organize themselves better. But there's only so many hours in a day, and if you're not taking some hours to yourself, you're just going to burn out, and I'm too young to let that happen to me. So I know how to put the pen down when I need to.
That is good. Yeah, I mean, that's key. I think that's where I struggled a lot because I came from the military. I went straight into line cooking by way of culinary school. And both of those industries really embrace the folks who are willing to bleed for it. And if you're not, because you've got other responsibilities, or frankly just want a healthy, balanced life, right, you might fall off to the wayside, or it felt that way. If I ever took a day off, that I would somehow get lapped by somebody not taking a day off, which is a complete baloney notion that should be addressed in a whole separate podcast. But, having that balance, then you do come back so much more refreshed and much more creative and able to problem solve, I would argue.
Without a doubt. I mean, I travel all the time for business, and I usually get to go to really interesting cities that I have never gone to. And generally what I'll do is I'll take an extra day before, after, or maybe 2 days, depending on where I'm going, and just kind of explore the city and just be there and not have any of my familiars from my house or, obligations like doing the dishes or maybe doing some laundry to distract me. And I can just kind of be part of wherever I am and immerse myself in something new. And I know everyone has different ways of relaxing, but that's my favorite way of kind of stepping outside myself. Because, I love exploring new cities. I'm an innovator. I'm a creator. And I love eating. And every city that you go to is going to have something awesome for you to sit down and indulge in. So why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm loving a lot of the street food and the street food inspired restaurants right now. Seattle is a little bit behind in some of the trends, but we have a really strong Asian American community here. And I think Filipino cuisine is really starting to rise up to some popularity. And so we're seeing these cool places that are being opened by immigrants and first and second generation folks. And it's really fun to go check out what they're doing and how, in particular to us, Northwest cuisine influenced the evolution of a, quote, ethnic cuisine that has come over. And it's just traditional cooking that they grew up with that they want to share. So much fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the greatest part about being in a city, too, is you can be exposed to as much authentic cuisine and experiences as you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's my favorite part about being in New York City. And, when I want to get some really good Puerto Rican food, and I can go to Brooklyn and get that. If I want some really authentic Chinese food, I can go down to Chinatown and get it. Or if I want something that's more cutting edge and trend forward, I can pick out a restaurant like a David Chang restaurant and go check one of them out, and just see what people are doing with the old and the new, and how it creates these delicious experiences for diners of all types to really be part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in New York City, you could do all of those scenarios all in one afternoon, probably.
If you really wanted to, but I'm sure you've marathon ate before, and after 5 hours, you just want to go for a 10-mile walk, and I never want to go for a 10-mile walk. So, but yeah, I would definitely pace yourself. But yeah, you can go wherever you want and at any time of day and try something totally new or totally authentic.
Yeah. Oh, makes me miss it. My best friend from high school lives in Harlem, and yeah, we've spent a couple of really great weekends eating ourselves silly. And even though we've chosen to walk everywhere, I still managed to gain like visible amounts of weight in a weekend. It's like, oh, okay. Oh boy.
It's fat, it's flavor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's gotta be delicious. But yeah, it's that's and you can get that in almost all the cities in the U.S. now. So many little cities that are up and coming now that I can't wait to check out. But the world is becoming flatter. People, are moving from different places because they want a different lifestyle. So someone might have been trained and work in some incredible restaurants in New York City, but they want a slower paced world and maybe relax a little bit and open a country house and an awesome restaurant in some little part of the world that you would never even imagine. So I think, the art of dining is definitely expanding to much more regions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see where the trends for this coming year are going to be really regionally focused again. And not so much like Southern cuisine as a capital S, capital C. It's more of what city-based regional. This is Savannah's food, for a nice plug for the Research Chefs Association conference. But yeah, or like Fayetteville food. I don't know, making that one up. But
yeah, I'm sure there is something. I'm sure you say, I'm going to the city. Where should I go? And somebody's like, you have to go to this place, and this place. And none of them are on Yelp or anywhere that you would maybe be advertised. I mean, they're authentic to that region or that community and those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, man. I can't believe how the hour just flew by on us. This has been so fun. Gosh, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's a privilege to be on your podcast. It really is.
Yeah, it's super fun, and it was fun to hear your interview with Adam Yee on My Food Jobs Rocks. One, because I think we have a friendship that's it's more of a friendship, and so getting to hear you tell your story through that platform, and then having you come on and kind of talk about the business side for me is really fun, and it's so special to get to share friends' stories as well as professional relationships.
That is very true, and thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Peas on Moss podcast. For more information about Peas on Moss and to inquire about being a guest or a sponsor on the show, check out the website peasonmoss.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Want more information about research work? Listen to the Culinologist series on Peas on Moss. If you liked what we're doing, please rate and review us on iTunes or Stitcher, and please share the show with your friends. Our theme music was composed by Joshua Schaub. Editing is provided by Chris King at Moon Palace Productions. Peas on Moss, because mise en place makes me sound like I had it all together.